The older James became, the clearer certain regrets started to feel. Not dramatic regrets, not headline regrets, quiet ones, the kind that arrive slowly on ordinary Tuesday mornings, while standing at the kitchen sink holding a cup of coffee. A few months ago, James was sitting alone on the back porch just after sunrise. The neighborhood was still quiet, sprinklers ticking softly across nearby lawns, a dog barking faintly somewhere down the street. The air smelled like wet grass and fresh coffee, and for no particular reason, he suddenly thought, I spent most of my life believing there would be more time later. That thought stayed with him all morning, because maybe you've felt this too. Not necessarily failure, not even bitterness, just a quiet realization that some parts of life were missed while trying to build a good one. And maybe that's the strange gift of getting older. You finally become honest enough to look backward clearly. Not to punish yourself, not to live in regret forever, but to finally understand what actually mattered. For James, there are 3 things he regrets most about his working years, and strangely enough, retirement is where he finally began healing all 3. The first regret was this: he was present at work, but absent almost everywhere else. For 40 years, James rarely missed a meeting, rarely missed a deadline, rarely missed a phone call from work. But there were so many smaller moments he barely remembers now. Maggie talking to him at dinner while he nodded distractedly, checking emails beside his plate. Summer evenings where he sat physically in the living room, but mentally still at the office. Long drives home spent rehearsing tomorrow's problems instead of noticing the sunset outside the windshield. One memory still hurts him quietly. Maggie once spent an entire afternoon making his favorite birthday dinner. Candles, music softly playing in the kitchen, a homemade pie cooling near the window, and halfway through dinner, James answered a work call. He still remembers Maggie smiling politely while staring down at her plate. At the time, it felt responsible, productive, necessary. Now, it simply feels sad. Because the truth is, many people respected James more when he was exhausted. And for years, he mistook that exhaustion for a meaningful life. These days, he tries to do something differently. When Maggie speaks now, he actually listens, fully. No television in the background, no phone in his hand, no invisible office still running inside his mind. Sometimes they sit together on the porch for nearly 20 minutes without saying much at all. And strangely, those quiet moments feel more present than entire years once did. The second regret was harder to admit. James spent most of his life waiting to live until conditions became perfect. He thought rest would come later, joy would come later, travel would come later, peace would come later. Everything meaningful was postponed for some future version of life that always seemed just a few years away. One winter morning years ago, Maggie asked if they could take a weekend trip to a small lake town nearby. Nothing expensive, nothing elaborate, just 2 quiet days away together. James said maybe next month. Work was busy, money felt tight. The timing wasn't ideal. That trip never happened, not because of tragedy, not because life exploded, just because waiting quietly became a habit. And that's what James regrets now. Not the missed vacations, not the unfinished bucket list, but how often he postponed aliveness itself. Maybe you've done this too. Waiting until the house is paid off, the stress calms down, retirement arrives, the schedule clears, the finances feel safer before allowing yourself to fully live your own life. Retirement taught James something painful. Perfect conditions never actually arrive. Life is always happening during the waiting. So now, he says yes more often. Morning drives, coffee dates with Maggie, slow walks through neighborhood streets when the evening light turns golden. He buys the good bread sometimes, lights candles on ordinary Tuesdays, stops to watch birds in the backyard. Tiny things, ordinary things, but they no longer get postponed. And honestly, those small moments feel richer now than many of the achievements he once sacrificed everything for. The third regret cut deepest of all. For far too many years, James let his job define his worth. When people asked who he was, he answered with his profession. When work went well, he felt valuable. When work became unstable, he felt afraid. When he retired, he quietly realized he no longer knew how to describe himself. The first few months after retirement felt strangely disorienting. One morning, James sat alone at the kitchen table before sunrise, coffee growing cold beside him, the house completely silent, and for the first time in decades, nobody needed anything from him that day. No meetings, no deadlines, no performance reviews, no constant proof that he mattered. And underneath the silence was one terrifying question. If I'm no longer productive, who am I now? That question haunted him, because work had not only paid his bills, it had organized his identity. But slowly, retirement began teaching him a gentler truth. A human life cannot survive being measured only by productivity. Now, James notices different things. The way Maggie laughs when she forgets the ending of a story, the smell of laundry fresh from the dryer, the comfort of watering flowers before the heat arrives, the sound of rain against the porch roof, a phone call with an old friend that lasts an hour longer than expected. None of those moments would look impressive on paper, but somehow, they feel more real than many of the years he spent chasing importance. And maybe that's the hidden gift inside regret. Regret clarifies things. It strips away performance. It forces honesty. Because now James understands, the goal was never to become endlessly productive. The goal was to actually experience his own life while he was living it. If this season of life feels familiar to you, I hope you'll stay a while with us here, because I think many people carry these same regrets quietly. The beautiful thing is, regret is not always punishment. Sometimes it's an invitation to finally become present, to stop postponing joy, to stop measuring your worth by exhaustion, to stop apologizing for wanting a softer life. These days, James and Maggie move more slowly. They drink coffee on the porch, watch sunsets from lawn chairs, walk through grocery stores without rushing anymore. And sometimes, James still feels sadness about how quickly those working years disappeared. But alongside the sadness now, there is also peace. Because retirement gave him something his career never could, the chance to finally come back to his own life. And maybe that's the truth nobody tells you about getting older. It's not too late for any of it. Not the presence, not the softness, not the joy, not the connection, not the life you thought you had missed. Somewhere tonight, someone is still sitting quietly at their kitchen table wondering whether it's too late to live differently. I hope one day they realize it isn't. Because sometimes, the second half of life is where people finally learn how to be fully here. And honestly, that may be the most meaningful work they ever do.